Tony, if I don't see any more questions, I'm going to call on myself for a question, because I'm going to follow up on John Gold's good line of questioning here, Your Honor, and ask you a more penetrating question. Specifically, you found with the Able Danger operation Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and Mohammed Atta. And those guys are very interesting because we know the CIA busted in their hotel rooms in the Malaysian terror summit of year 2000. And did not put them on the terrorism watch list. We know that there's a long paper trail here. These are the same guys who lived with the FBI informant, Abdul Sadr Sheikh, in San Diego, right? These are the same guys that were connected to Barksdale Air Force Base, maybe, and that were responsible for the death of 9/11 martyr American whistleblower David M. Graham. So, specifically, when you talk about Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, and this is why we feel you're maybe soft-pedaling on a clear evil in our country.
I understand your frustration, and this is one of those areas where I've been working painfully hard to stick to the facts as I understood them at the time I learned them, and not expanded my knowledge. And the information I refer to, based on my knowledge, is based on what came out of the data. Now, this may be a little bit obtuse, a little bit esoteric to understand, but we looked at the social networks. We didn't have that information you're talking about. CIA would not share anything with us. I spent a lot of time with the CIA representative to Special Operations Command trying to explain to him how what we were doing was not in competition with anything CIA was doing, to include the finding to kill bin Laden. So the bottom line is we never received the information you're talking about. With that said, we did have other sources of information relating to the networks. And one of the things I've said, and this is going to be very unpalatable for some people on the left, we were targeting the mosque system. The mosque system itself was being used to support their activities, logistically and operationally, for better or for worse. And so I can't tell you how we did it, other than we had people who were monitoring those mosques, pulling information out. And the data that came out of those mosques was put into this social network. Now, keep in mind, this is well before Facebook. A lot of you in this room are my Facebook friends, which is wonderful. With that said, there was no such thing as Facebook back then. So one of the things we recognized early on is that they function a lot like a mafia. So let's look at how mafias work with family members and trusted lieutenants. And we use that as kind of a construct to understand their operations. So the bottom line is, I think we both agree that there's some really bad things here that we've not resolved fully. But the only thing I can talk to you about the fact that we discovered these guys through this social network analysis. So that's not saying what you're saying is not correct. It's just not information I had at the time when I worked this issue.
All right, I'd like to know for sure how you talk so positively about the existence of Al-Qaeda, but we've never ever really seen, or it's never been presented to us on the news about a obvious, I have not seen anything about any obvious management structure. There's no Office of Public Affairs. There's no logo or flag, and the finances originate. Nobody really knows where they originate from.
We defined that moniker, didn't we?
So I'm really not too sure if anybody could really define Al-Qaeda. And the other thing, you were talking about how they were operating through mosques. Terrorist organizations were operating through mosques, right. And which was a good bet that this is where the Muslim extremists are operating from. They're Muslim extremists as opposed to real Muslims.
Right.
So my feeling is that there's really no defined enemy at all. It's a created enemy by us to justify our presence in the Middle East, to push our policies.
I understand. Let me answer it two parts. I came into Able Danger in 1999 not as a terrorism expert. One of the points I'll try to make in other discussions I've had is that I came in as part of this almost B team. We're not experts. Here's Al-Qaeda, for better or for worse, I'll use that, attacked the embassies in Africa, and we saw that they were developing. Part of the challenge was the very point you bring up. Where are they? I went to a place called JWAC, Joint Warfare Analysis Center. And since we're talking about the Gulf War, I think the Gulf War anniversary started today. JWAC did a great job of targeting Iraqi targets to be taken down in that war. I mean, they did a brilliant job, so we minimized a lot of civilian casualties. There were some, I'm not saying there wasn't. Well, we went to JWAC to begin with and said, hey, we've been tasked to target Al-Qaeda. How do we do that? And they said, we don't know. They don't live anywhere. I'm serious. I mean, it's like, we don't know. And we spun our wheels for 6 months in 1999. I was part of the process. So the idea came to us by the fact that another organization called Land Information Warfare Activity was looking at social networks. And it was, for better or for worse, nothing more than an informal franchise of like-minded individuals, a lot of whom came out of the Afghan war, the Mujahideen. And it was led by either a real or titular head, depending on how your perspective is, of Osama bin Laden. And his interest was based on our going into Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, the infidels. So largely, as I understand it, and again, I learned this in 99, 2000, he's out for revenge for the fact that the royal family allowed us to come into Saudi Arabia. So our job, and again, I'm saying this from my perspective because I've always been very strong about limiting my knowledge to what I knew and how I learned it. We had to go about defining this target because it was the first time, and I worked counter-drug too. I worked some of the stuff in the transit zone, and because I had a strong background in that from the 90s. This was the first real time we had to look at a non-geographic target. During World War II, we had, you know where they were at. During Korea. During other times, we've had, issues. During the 80s, I did do some counterterrorism stuff in Germany, chasing terrorist organizations, but they were all linked to Russia in some form. They were all being funded through these funnel organizations. So we even knew who was running those. Hezbollah, Iranians. So this was different. I know I've seen I get this all the time from my Facebook friends. Oh, there's no Al-Qaeda. I think there is. I think if nothing else, it's a state of mind. It's like being a Californian. Hey, I get this idea that the world should be a certain way. I think that's the problem with them. It's both a good thing and a bad thing. They had a certain perception of how the world should be. And I do believe that bin Laden on 9/11 thought there'd be a worldwide uprising of Muslims against us. I really do believe that. He didn't get it. Now, with that said, I think there's a new generation of terrorists coming. Anwar al-Awlaki. He went to school here. He's hiding out in Yemen. And he gets us. He understands what's going to hurt us. I've listened to his philosophy. I've listened to these videos of his, and he gets it. We're going to attack you with, and we're going to kill you by the death of 1,000 cuts, little by little. One of the things I believe he said, he loves the fact that we're bogged down in Afghanistan. We're losing people, we're spending money we don't have, and that's going to their cause. So whether there's a cohesive, Al-Qaeda, show up at a mosque in Jordan and you walk in and here they all are, probably not. But it's an idea, it's a mindset, it's a radical mindset. One of the things I did say in this Bangladesh conference on Capitol Hill is that this should not be perceived as a war against the Muslim faith. It shouldn't be. There are bad apples in every faith. I mean, God forbid I compare, let's talk about the Crusades. I mean, I'm a big fan of the History Channel. I've watched a lot about the Crusades. And man, that's brutal. And that was, religion on religion. And clearly there were bad eggs, the Inquisition. Boy, I don't think that's Christianity's brightest hour either. So there's always been extremes. Never going to get away from them. The question is, how do we all move forward to resolve this? And unfortunately, I believe there are elements still right now who would kill you as look at you, if they could.
Mine's quick. It's kind of a follow-up to that, but aren't we letting them win then by fighting them?
Good question. All right, excellent.
The way we're doing it, we're letting them win. We are playing into what they want us to do in many ways. And I've said this on the air. Look, being in Afghanistan ain't helping us, but it sure is draining our wealth. There's a scene in my book. I think it's in the second or third chapter, I think. I come up over the ridge on my first mission outside the wire into Kabul. And I come up over this ridge and I look down, and it goes, as you go over the ridge, you see for literally 2 miles dead Soviet armor and APCs, as far as the eye could see. And it's like, oh my God, these people really did try to win the war here. The scene was a scene from hell. Just as far as the eye could see, dead tanks. And 3 dust devils slowly turning in this clear blue 110-degree sky. It just felt like hell. And it's like, we don't want to do this. And yet, we're not killing them village to village like the Soviets were, but the net effect is not much different. We're not making... one of the saddest moments I've seen in the news recently is some U.S. soldier, specialist, talking to the camera. One of his buddies had just got killed, and he's standing there almost in tears, talking about his experience there in Afghanistan and his buddy being shot. He said, don't they understand we're the good guys? No, they don't. They don't care. You're foreign. You're an infidel. So we got to think about what we're doing a little bit better than we are.
I just want to ask you about the 10,000 books that the Pentagon bought. I mean, does that tick you off? I mean, it ticks me off as a taxpayer, but maybe the money's going to a good place. Did you use it for a charity? Or
No.
Can we make a book together, you and me, a much higher price book?
I was just in New York.
Copies?
I was just in New York working with the publisher of my next book, so and I'm sure it's going to piss them off too. So what can I say? The money from that went to the publisher to pay for the printing.
That was a wash.
That was a wash. And we are suing DoD over the fact that we feel confident we can prove everything in the redacted sections is already unclassified by the fact it's in public domain in some form. So,
You were hoping to sell a lot more than 10,000 copies.
Well, we have, but I didn't plan on doing it this way. And that the whole issue regarding that, to my knowledge, the Pentagon has never done that before, where they've bought up 10,000 copies.
I was going to ask you about that. Has it ever been done in
No.
history?
No, you guys, I challenge you to figure it out. According to everybody I've talked to, it's never been done before. Let me answer this real quick. Had they done this in 1994, before the internet, it may have been effective. But unfortunately, the book got out, and it's out there. As a matter of fact, it's on eBay right now if you want to get one of the unredacted. I can't afford to buy one of the unredacted. It's like $4,000 a best offer for some of the unredacted copies. So it's out there.